Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Let's Draw, and we're on episode 2 of the Teela series, and I think we're going to be wrapping her up in the stream, so come along for the journey. Consider liking and subscribing if you're enjoying the content. The support is greatly appreciated. As you can see, we've got a lot of good things blocked in here already for the character. We need to continue to tweak and improve and refine. We need to bring in the falcon in the background, which is supposed to represent the sorceress. We're going to bring in some environmental aspects as well. So maybe some like mountainous terrain on the sides there. We'll figure out something for her to be standing on. Maybe it's just simple ground. We'll explore that as well. And we have to get into a little bit of her cape as well. But I think we're headed in a great direction with this. And so I'm glad to be back this week. I was getting over a cold last week, and so my voice still probably sounds a little off. Last week it was definitely a no-go for streaming, so it's nice to get back to the groove and to hang out with you guys again for this fun art series. All right, so let's jump into this here. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can make Teela awesome. So let's turn off this underdrawing, because I realize we still have this orange underdrawing, and we're going to need it for the falcon. But I think just in terms of refining her, I'd like to turn it off so that we have a really good view of everything, and then we're not distracted by any of that underdrawing. And as usual, when I come back to an image after having not looked at it for a while, you'll know that you'll usually see things right away that you'd like to tweak and change. And so what I was looking at is I think I want to just kind of bring her hairline down just slightly there. I was looking a little tall. And I think, we might just be getting a little too aggressive with the eyebrow here. I think I want to just kind of tone it down a little bit. And then I don't know that I'm fully satisfied with some of the way that we're treating some of the far side of the face there. So there's going to be just a little bit of like minor tweaks here to get this character feeling representative of the classic character we're trying to go for. I remember we were trying to kind of mess with this far eye a little bit here last time, and we were not quite satisfied with it, and I'm trying to think about maybe taking another stab at it here. I also think maybe we could suggest a little bit more shading in the hair, a little more volume. All right, let's do the dreaded flip. We're definitely due for a good flip to just check everything out and see if we gain any helpful insights from looking at the flip side of the equation. Do I want to bring in a little... maybe we'll go real subtle with that rim line on that nose. And let's let's tweak the head a little bit here. Whoops, nope, undo. I hit Control X by accident there. All right, let's get a little bit of contouring on this leg. Because I do like having some areas that are a bit flatter, but I think that region just maybe was a little bit too flat. Not enough shading there on that. And I think maybe the same thing with this leg. Just get a little indication of some roll off of the lighting. Well, I think I liked it originally the way that we had it on that hair part there. Okay, and then let's do a little bit of that contouring on the hand as well. I'd love to know if any of you guys are artists and you're working on any cool projects. So definitely leave a comment, and yeah, I'd love to hear about it. Bring a little more detail into this torso armor. I may want to pull back the light a little bit on this area here. Oh, maybe we can do kind of like a little bit of a backlight. Is that too, does that flatten it too much? No, I think we might be all right with that. Let's roll with that. I think we might just do a slight liquefy here. Oh boy. Show backdrop. Layer. Oh boy, what's the layer? Layer 1? Yeah, we want layer 1. The challenges of a good liquefy setup. I just want to bring the leg in a little bit here and here. I'd be curious, do you guys like using the liquefy tool at all? I guess if you're not in Photoshop, you probably have some alternate version of that. I don't know what they're called in other apps, but I think other apps have stuff like that. It's pretty handy, you know, to make little tweaks, things that you see later, and you just want to shift things around a little bit and do them in a way that doesn't totally destroy the quality of the image. I mean, you could do some of that stuff by going into free transform and then using a warp, but this is limited. Well, you can add squares to this, but you know, the basic warp is 9 squares, which is a bit limited in terms of how it can move things. But in Liquify, if you ever tell it to display the grid, it's warp, but times 100, basically. You've got lots of tiny little vertexes, and the grid is very dense, so that's why it can do very subtle movements. So it's interesting to think of that, right? That the warp tool is basically a very simple version of Liquify. It's just for quick, simple edits. And it's nice that you don't have to go into, oh, you know what? I have a note here for myself about feathers, and I guess we should probably do that. This is why I write things in, so that I don't forget about ideas. All right, so trying to tap into my past self here and think about what I was going for. I mean, this is, I guess, one downside to working on a piece over a longer period of time, or like not coming back to it for a while, like I do with this series where we do it weekly, is that, yeah, maybe some ideas sort of get lost, or they sort of transform, or you lose some of the initial vision for it. But notes, obviously, very helpful here. And I write notes all the time in the art. I'm not afraid to put something in, especially if I'm going to step away for a while. And I know that I might forget something, right? That note there is. So I hopefully don't leave anything on the table. And anybody watching live, you can let me know if the audio's sounding all right or not. I think I've got everything working pretty good. I'm getting better at making sure all that stuff is set up correctly. Sometimes the tech gremlins, they get in there and they still try to be a nuisance. Yeah, cool. All right, I'm glad we had that note, because I do like this as an extra bit of texture and the tie-in to the Falcon. We do need to figure out what's going on with the line here for the cloak. I want to have a little indication of it, so our eyes can, you know, flow up through the image and go all the way up here to this fancy collar, which that is quite the collar, isn't it? I think in the is it the 60s? I think that they some dresses, women's dresses, had they were doing some really adventurous collars back in that decade, I think. But that's something definitely to learn a little bit about, is fashion, if you're going to be a character designer or concept artist, right? Is try and learn a little bit about fashion and the history of fashion. I mean, when you're talking about medieval armor, it might not initially seem like you're talking about fashion, but you know, back in the day, that was not just for battle, but that was a fashionable statement of status, right? Like the kings and stuff. I mean, they wouldn't really be going into battle much, but they sure had a sweet set of armor that they could wear, right? So even some of that stuff that doesn't seem like it's fashion, it actually is. So yeah, keep that in mind. And the more stuff you know about, the more you have to draw upon when you're trying to design things. If you're the kind of person who is sort of very narrow in your media consumption, then then the art you produce might also seem a little narrow, right? Like if the only thing you've ever watched in your life is I don't know, Dragon Ball Z, let's say, like maybe that's the only show you've ever watched that's art based, right? Then whatever you end up producing will probably feel kind of like Dragon Ball Z, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but just knowing that your bandwidth is sort of limited, or that your perspective is narrower, right? Like that can be a hindrance when you're trying to do concept art. But of course, you can pair your sketching with research and reference gathering, and you always should. Like before I do these things, I go and look up, what does Teela look like, right? Like who is she and what's her story, and what's the couple different versions, like what's the classic version look like versus maybe a toy that came out. And these would not come out nearly as good if I was relying on my memory. Can you imagine that? Like, yeah, I'm not like watching these old shows all the time, so that I think would be a complete disaster. So that little bit of time spent ahead of time thinking about gathering that important reference is huge. The preparation phase, right? Don't neglect that. Something kind of interesting. I think a lot of people watching art videos like this are probably familiar with this, but I'll just mention it anyway. And hopefully everybody knows who Bob Ross is. But if you are watching Bob Ross and you're paying attention, you'll notice that he is often looking off to the right of the canvas, like off camera. And what he's looking at over there is he's looking at a version of the painting already done. He's already finished the one. So whenever he was going to do a show and do a painting on a show, he would always do the painting first completely so that he could look at it while he was painting on camera. And your initial reaction might be, if you don't know that, well, that sucks. Like that, that he's not as cool maybe, or he's not as badass. But when you really stop and think about it, it's like, that's just logical. Like he was under a lot of stress to be taking a piece from zero to finished in a very specific time period, right? Like his show it had to be a certain length. That's just a ton of pressure, right? Like you want to do some preparation. And so that was a way that he found that he could be entertaining and get things done in a timely manner and all that. And it was really quite brilliant. But that's just a kind of a fun tidbit to know about, though, if you're watching his videos and you're noticing that fact. Like when I'm doing these, I usually will have a picture of like, the character over here somewhere. Like in this case, I have like a picture of the toy. I might have a picture from the cartoon, right? So I can see what does the outfit look like and stuff. And yeah, that's just common sense. You'll maybe see a little bit more of the sort of like full conceptual process in the next series we're going to do here on the channel, which is, as I mentioned last time, we're going to be trying to redesign villains from the Ghostbusters cartoon, the one from the 80s. We're going to try to re-envision them for a more sort of like high fidelity execution. So not like a hand-drawn 2D cartoon, but what would they look like if they were in like a video game, let's say, like a modern video game with high-end graphics? Or maybe a film as well. But I think that'd be super fun because there's really, honestly, there's a lot of amazing designs in that cartoon, but they're a little simple and for good reason. Like they had to hand draw those things a million times. But the underlying ideas are really cool. And I just think that cartoon in general is just brilliant. And maybe I'm a little biased because it's something from my childhood, but I'm curious to see what we can do with it, and that'll be coming up next week. So if you're interested in that, definitely come hang out. I'd love to have you join us while we try and work on some fun Ghostbusters villains. So we're like a little bit in like the noodling phase at this point on her, but I kind of am appreciating that phase, just getting everything nice and tuned up. And I think maybe we should maybe put a few more feathers in over here on the end, just to make sure we're completing that thought. I suppose we should be a little more careful about our shield shapes back here. I think we just tossed it in pretty quickly when we first put it in, just to kind of placeholder it, indicate that's where it was, but I'd like to be just a little bit more precise. It's tricky because if there's a rim light back here that I'm using to carve out the outer shape of the dark areas, but then there's a shield in the way, it's like, oh boy, we kind of lose the opportunity to show the other side of the arm here. But I'm going to take a little artistic liberty here, and I'm going to just bring in a little hint of it, and hopefully it doesn't break the illusion too much. I think that works okay. That's part of what's cool about 2D art, handcrafted 2D art, is that you can break the rules. Like, it's like part of the whole point of it, right? Is you're adding your interpretation, and that interpretation isn't just about a person's outfit. It could be about the way the lighting looks, the type of calligraphy and mark making you use to indicate those things. It's all part of your statement and what makes you unique and special as an artist. So we want to kind of embrace that stuff. It's the things that, like, robots can't do or can't have, right? Is you can never look at what a robot has made and feel like you're relating to somebody's experience, because there's no human behind it, right? Like, it's a soulless thing. It might be rendered to death. There might be some details that are impressive, but you don't connect with it in a way that you relate to another human's experience, and that there's something very precious that's lost in that, and I hope that everyone understands that. And also, of course, like, working with an artist, you get to collaborate with a creative brain, and that's a special thing. Let's get some water going here. I think some of that nuance maybe gets lost in the conversation, but a really good example I have is, imagine if you tuned into the Olympics and there was no people in the Olympics. It was just robots, because the robots were able to do all the stunts, or all the sports and all the activities, all just better and more flawlessly than people could. I would never tune into that, right? Like, who cares about that? I know that they're not like a perfect, it's not a perfect analogy, but it just gets you thinking, I think, about what's important about human creativity and the human experience. You know, this little line right here, I'm like, yeah, that's supposed to be the shield, but is that confusing because you lose sort of the cape, and does this feel like it's the edge of the cape? I feel like some of that stuff might be getting a little bit tough to read. When you've got this kind of stuff to solve, I sort of think about it like a puzzle. And when I think of it that way, it makes it a little more fun. Like your first inclination is to think, wow, the art isn't working and I'm not doing this well. And I mean, I used to be that way about it, where I'd just be like beating myself up like, oh man, like why didn't I like know how to solve that perfectly the first time or whatever. And all of that's really quite silly, right? Like that stuff just, it's a very incremental, slow gain of skill, and along the way, you're going to be solving all these puzzles in your art, and each time you solve a puzzle, you level up a little bit. And I have more fun with it when I think of it that way. So if you're somebody who feels like you're constantly just really critiquing the heck out of your own stuff, I mean, it's good to be always trying to improve, but at the same time, you don't want to make the experience so brutal for yourself that you lose steam, right? And so there's a careful balance to maintain there, and just think about that a little bit. Also, you guys will have to let me know if you appreciate any of the other commentary that I do during these. They're sort of like tangent conversations, artist ramblings. So we're not necessarily talking about Teela for 2 hours, but we could, or you could just be like, yeah, I just prefer if you just didn't say anything and you just drew stuff. So you guys you should let me know what kind of content you like and what kind of conversations that you find interesting. But at the moment, I'm just going to kind of be, doing my my art rambles. They happen whether I'm saying them or not. They're happening in my head. So now you guys are just along for the ride. Let's do another flip here and see how things are looking. This whole thing might just be a little too complicated to understand. This whole shape here, I think there's just a little too much information. More is not better in the world of arts and in many things, but in art, it's a really good one to remember because there can be this inclination to, over define or over render, over detail things, and I certainly fall victim to that all the time because I like detail. Oops, let's switch to layer 1. Just want to tweak this shield shape a bit. I could just redraw it, but let's try the liquefy and see. That gets us where we want to be. I feel like that's better. I think it might even need to go a little more out. This is a great example of where flipping an image can be helpful, because an ellipse in perspective is something that needs to have a very particular sort of angle to it, right? And flipping something can reveal issues with perspective, issues with symmetry, ellipses in perspective, right? All that stuff. Okay, I think that's probably a decent little refinement pass on her. Let's go to the ground now, because I do feel like we need to start to get some of this stuff in. I don't want to use up the entire time just tinkering on very minor things and ignoring big places that are still unresolved. So I might do this on another layer as well. I know I scribbled these in last time very quickly just to show what we're going to do. But now we're going to really do it. So let's get in here. And on a new layer, we'll figure it out. You know, we're going to have 4 images for this series. And each one of them, we've done this sort of like rocky terrain. And so I sort of wonder if like it'd be weird to not do that on this 4th final image, right? Like maybe we just kind of stick to that theme so that there's a bit of unity between all of them. I mean, we're getting unity just via the franchise and via some of our stylistic choices. But I think some of the subject matter can also be unifying in the environment. So maybe we'll kind of explore that. We can't show as much of the terrain down here because we're shifting her down so we can show that falcon. So we have a little bit of a limited opportunity here to show some of this stuff, but I think we can still do something cool. Still have some fun, interesting shapes. Look up at my OBS screen so I can get a very easy alternate view on things. Okay, all right. Yeah, maybe we could put in a little hint of some stuff over here. And maybe this terrain wanders back here a little bit more. I'd like to get enough light on this ground so that way we can see the cast shadow from her in a way that adds some nice depth to the image. I guess we can paint some of that, and maybe there's a little shadow underneath this foot. Let's have a little more light hitting right here. Just remember, if you want something to read as a volume, all you need to do is to try and assign all of the major planes of it a different value. So, like, if we're going to try to make a cube look cubic, then if we just think about putting 3 distinct values on the sides we can see, then this is going to read very 3-dimensional. It helps to have the box drawn so that it looks like it has convincing foreshortening. That obviously is very helpful, but in terms of rendering a form to look 3D, think about assigning those values. And it's good to practice on something like a box because a box is pretty simple. It's one of the simplest volumes you can try and tackle. And if you get good at doing it with a box, then chances are you won't have quite as hard a time jumping to something like shading a cylinder and then an arm, right? Because an arm is basically a complicated cylinder. So yeah, if you're just kind of having trouble with something, think about if there's a way to break it down. Try something with a few less hurdles to overcome. In addition to being an artist, I'm also a gamer. It's what got me into being an artist in the first place, is I wanted to do art for games. And there's some interesting parallels between learning games and learning any kind of skill like art, and the kind of little, you know, mind games you can play with yourself, or little mini challenges that you're presented with that can help you level up, right? So think about ways that you can sort of gamify the things that are hard to do. I was recently I play World of Warcraft. You may have heard of it. I hadn't played in a long time. I played way back in the alpha, then in classic, and then I played in Burning Crusade a little bit. Anyway, I played kind of off and on, but I came back to it recently. And by the way, we're going to switch now to some of the terrain in the background. I'm going to try to do these like canyon-like rocks. I should probably pull up a picture of these, but I'm going to not follow my own advice, and I'm just going to wing this. It'll probably look worse because of that. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to look up a picture of some canyon rocks because... Let's see, is this going to... Let's see, can we do a new window? New window, new window. Okay, cool. Let's do canyon rocks. I have a sense for what they look like, but you know, if you have a picture in front of you, you might get some ideas on some shapes and whatnot. Okay, cool. I've got a generic picture of some canyon rocks. They've got a nice jagged sort of situation going on. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about gamifying things and breaking them into smaller parts to make them easier, right? And then I was talking about WoW and how I play it, and I was going to use an example of something that recently happened to me in WoW where I wanted to try a different spec for my character, and the reason I wanted to is because the other spec was doing a lot more damage than the one I was doing. And so I felt like I was getting real sweaty trying to push damage on my spec, and I was, you know, trying twice as hard as the other person but getting half the damage. And that didn't feel great, so I decided, why don't I switch specs and just do the one that everybody is totally blasting with. And the challenge there, follow me on this, don't worry, we're going to get to the point. The challenge there was that the other spec is also more complicated. There's more to it. And as I was trying to learn it, one of the things that was really hard about it was that for it to function, I had to know everything about it. Like, I had to understand all aspects of it, how everything worked together. And without knowing the full picture, I couldn't make the class function the way it was supposed to. And what made that hard was, again, that I couldn't really break it down into smaller bits. I had to sort of digest the entire thing at once. And so in practice, then, when you're trying to actually like execute, when you're trying to like do things in combat and make the damage work, it's like 10 different things you're juggling, and you can't start with 2 balls. You have to start with 10 balls, and all the balls just keep dropping, right? And that made it very difficult. Versus if you play a class from 0 and you level up with that class, you slowly gain the skills. And then when you're max level and you have all the skills, it's not crazy for you, right? Like you had time to kind of work through it. So the analogy there is that it's harder because I couldn't break it into smaller pieces. But with a lot of things you can. And if you can, you definitely should. All right, so we're just kind of exploring some interesting mountainy shapes back here. I'm having fun with this. Put a few smaller shapes in. Remember, just even changing the direction of the stroke can just give you the hint that there's a little bit of a planar change, right? Or that the contours don't line up. Like you can see here that this series of marks is slightly different than this series of marks in angle, and therefore now we read this as a surface that has three planes to it. So that's something when you're using hatching and whatnot, you want to definitely leverage that. It's a tool you don't want to leave out of the equation. So now the interesting thing is that we're indicating that there's light coming from over here, and then there's a rim light from over here. This is like from the front, and then we've got a rim light kind of coming from the back. And we want to think about, well, how does that affect the terrain? And is the terrain part of that equation, or is it far back enough to where the lighting environment kind of changes a little bit back there? I think we want to maybe try to have it feel at least a little bit consistent. So I'd like to maybe show some of this big light coming through and hitting more of these surfaces. But at the same time, I don't want any of this to feel like it's as close to us as she is. So I'm going to try to bring in a little more light here, just to stick with that lighting theme, but being aware that I don't want it to draw your attention quite as much. The interesting thing about this is that we're sort of implying like this outdoor scene. But when you're outdoors, typically things that get further away get lighter, right? Because you have atmospheric perspective going on. This would be more of a common scenario in an interior, where you have like, you know, smaller lights, table lamps, things like that with fall off, and then there's not any there's not a lot of great distances that you're seeing. So you're going to get things darker further away. That's just a generalization of tackling interiors versus exteriors. But we have this kind of interesting sort of style that we have with this like light on dark, and it's interesting. It has a kind of an intimate quality that mimics what an interior might feel like, despite it indicating that it is not an interior. It's an interesting thing to consider. And I'm also considering right now what I want to do with this left side, because again, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of light hitting this. But we do have this rim light back here, so maybe, let's see. We could try and reverse light this stuff back here. So we could indicate some of that rim light kind of coming and hitting this stuff back here. And bring a little bit of terrain in here. I don't know that I like the angle of that. Let's try. Some very subtle. I'm being very picky about what's going on this side of the image, I realize. But there's not a lot. I don't want a lot here, so what is there just has to feel, it just has to be, it's very, very careful, precarious area. Oh, that's right, we're on a different layer. Oh, we're on her layer. Okay, well, let's just merge it all. That's fine. It's mostly as I was playing down here near her feet, I didn't want to have to tackle that on the same layer if I wanted to make any big edits. we may just not need as much of that indicated there. Okay. I'm just going to rely mostly on this back lighting here to help us feel this left mountain. So she's sort of like in like a chasm or something, I guess. It's kind of what we're suggesting. Which is really all in an effort to create a really cool frame for the falcon. Which maybe we should, oops, that's her cloak there. Let's kill that. Yeah, we want to make sure we have really good showcase for that guy. And I think we might be getting to a point where I want to start to get that blocked in. This little liquefy layer 1. I feel like that was just getting a little too crooked there. Okay, cool. That is, yeah, it's interesting. I sort of like how suggestive this is, and I sort of wonder if maybe we can kill a little bit of the information back here. Make it a little darker back there. Just have some of that edge stuff working. Maybe we bridge this terrain here. Yeah, actually, that's kind of interesting. Stair step that area there. And it could be that maybe there wants to be some, like, indication of some bigger cracks or something in this surface. What I want to do is I want to sort of create like a visual flow up through here, right? And then the falcon kind of completes that and frames her and makes it all look super neato. That's the hope. So let's try putting the falcon in. And to do that, we're going to be bringing back our underdrawing. Save your work if you're working on something. Hit that save button. And now, again, because I don't draw animals all the time, let's pull up this image of a falcon over here. I'm going to use my mouse instead of my tablet because my other monitor is... I have my tablet mapped to my primary monitor, and it's kind of a pain to get over to that. Okay, let's see. There's my falcon image. This is a photo of a falcon from the front. I think it's a peregrine falcon, but... there's a certain kind of head shape and stuff that I want to make sure I capture. And I could just look at an image from the cartoon, but the cartoon bird is very simplistic, and I don't want to be that simple with this. So, okay, let's get into this here. Okay, so let's see. There's a the beak is really important, right? Like that. If you don't get the beak shape right, you can make it. You can transform from a falcon into a duck before you know it. So, some features that are very critical. I mean, all of it's important, but it's kind of like a human, right? Like if the foot is a little off, it's not good, but it's probably better that the foot is off than like the face being off, right? And then there's, yeah, so my underdrawing is actually pretty decent here, but... And there's obviously like some local colors and patterning that's happening in the photo that, you know, we're not going to really think about that too much initially. And I suppose we want the lighting to feel like it matches her, so we want to have more lighting from the left. And there's kind of a general kind of boxy plane to this side of the face here. And then we get the super awesome shiny reflective eye. And now, you know, there's like feathers on all this stuff, but some of these feathers they're either small or they're very like tightly packed, that we don't really benefit from trying to have every surface feel super detailed with feather texture. We can give little hints of it. It's sort of like if you're drawing a brick wall, you know, like in your drawing, you're not going to draw every brick, right? Like that's silly. You're going to take a few spots, you're going to put a few bricks in a few places to just indicate, hey, this is a brick wall. Like this tells the viewer this is a brick wall. And then maybe when you render it, you can put some textures in there that fill some of that. But, you know, we always think about, is it better to be suggestive? And living in this sort of style of these images, we want to be careful about being super literal about all of the smaller details. And speaking of what's important for the big read, it's the silhouette and these bigger shapes, like the overall, you know, shape of this head or whatever it is, right? Like that's pretty darn important. We don't want to mess that up. Okay, let's see if I get this in here like this. I guess I can draw the other eye in now. And is that going to get... I'm just trying to see where that rim light might hit. I guess we're not going to get much of this other side. I guess we can maybe have a little bit of the beak get caught. And then we'll have the rim light sort of hit the bird over here. Have this kind of recede into the background. And let's see, the body of the bird is kind of just like an oblong sphere, but the feathers kind of make it feel a little bit boxy. It's interesting. That's another thing I'll mention about animals, is that if you're trying to really learn how to draw an animal, reference clearly is important, like we're doing here. I'm looking at a picture of a falcon to make sure I get it in a decent spot. But a lot of animals have obscuring elements on the surface, fur, feathers, things like that, right? And that makes it, they're important details, but it makes it hard initially to understand the structure and the anatomy of the animal. So what I recommend you do is, in addition to looking at a photo of whatever creature it is you're trying to draw, also try to find an image of their skeleton, because that is how you truly see the structure, right? Like there's nothing obscuring the skeleton. You can see, I mean, it's really revealing, like, especially, I don't know, like something like a rabbit, right? Where it's like, it feels like it's just this ball of fluffiness. And then you look at the skeleton and you're like, wow, like the leg has these like crazy long bones, and then the foot is super long, and then the toes are, it's like, there's a lot in there. And you may not end up, you know, drawing that in because it might be hidden, but when you're thinking about various poses that the animal's taking, the way that it might be moving around, right? Running around, hopping, that skeleton is doing very specific things. And that affects the silhouette, affects all kinds of stuff. So, you know, you want to have a sense of that, and you want to think about the skeleton in addition to the surface details. Trying to kind of do a pass on this that's nice enough in the initial go that we're not going to be having to do like a second run at this. I'd like to try and just nail it. And we already have an underdrawing, so we have general proportions. I know the lighting. We got the style locked in. So it's a reasonable challenge to just try and make this just look correct in our first, or well, it's not our first stab, but you know, our first attempt at the final version. But as I think I mentioned before, like oftentimes I'll do 2 or 3 drawings sometimes to get things really nailed down. Now, see, I have to be careful because I'm defining these feathers with an edge, and the edge is what's going to be dark. So, you know, like technically what we want to do is we want to paint light and then probably erase the feathers out, but I also don't want them to be fully lit. So we're balancing a few things here. We'll get there, don't worry. And then I guess these sort of get bigger. I'm sure there's going to be some kind, it always works out that somebody ends up watching this video who's like a bird expert, right? It's like somebody who's like, you know, a grandmaster of the Audubon Society for birds or something, right? And they're going to be in here and they'll be like, the feathers, there's 12 feathers here, and then they rotate at and I'm just going to be like, well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did not nail that, but we're gonna do our best to try and be fairly convincing with the patterning of the feathers here, and that's all we can hope for. At the end of the day, this is a kind of like a stylized piece of art, and so I don't mind if we have a little bit of inaccuracy in feather counts and things like that. Now the wing shape here, I feel like I could have been a little better in the underdrawing to capture a better version of the wing shape. It's a little bit, it doesn't like come out like this. It's sort of more like this. So we're going to try to get that in place here. And what I may do is I may mirror this just to get me started, and before I start lighting this, so that way we can use it as a base for this side over here. That'll be darker. We'll at least have like the feathers blocked in. We'll know what they're doing, because the wings are fairly symmetrical when they're spread out in terms of the basic layout and shape. Now on the end here, they've got some really big feathers going on. And I really don't want to have a tangent issue, so I think we'll just have it cascade off the side there like that. We'll leave it to your imagination to think about what might be happening up off the edge there. And then I don't really mind the fall off here, like the light kind of falling off on that is actually kind of nice. And then, you know, we're not really going to see the feet too much because of her head. And I'm not complaining about that. It's kind of maybe nice that we don't have to get too crazy with those bird feet. But I think we're going to see just a little bit there. Remember too that we're going to knock back the overall value of the falcon so it doesn't get to pure white like anything on her. So that'll be a way to keep some separation. That way it doesn't feel like the bird is like landing on her head or something, right? Like we want to make sure we're making use of that atmospheric depth. And now these feathers are pretty big. See, we've got 3, so we'll try to be accurate about our count down here. Okay, and now let's go ahead and mirror this before we get into... Did we do this on another layer? We did not. We were very bold. That's fine. I'm going to mirror this over. Let's see, probably right about there. Okay, and then we can bring in more light hitting this side over here. I think we're safe to turn off the underdrawing. Yeah, I think we're safe to do that. Okay. It's fun in the later stages of the image when you can kind of see your plans coming together, like kind of confirming that, yeah, that's going to be fine. Yeah, that'll work out. But before that, there's definitely many moments to sort of question if what you were thinking was correct. And you can avoid some of that doubt by just thumbnailing, right? Doing more pre-comps and loose drawings of something. It's the same idea we talked about earlier about breaking something down into smaller, more digestible parts. One way to do that is to just do a smaller, simpler version of an image, aka a thumbnail, right? But we didn't do any thumbnails here, so we'll do it live. But I think for a YouTube audience, maybe there's something kind of nice about that, like seeing something a bit raw, warts and all. Yeah, but going back to that Ghostbusters stuff, there we're going to be doing the conceptual process where we're going to do some thumbnail designs. We're going to explore in thumbnail form first before we dive into the design, because I'm going to be actually rendering those. And since it's a redesign, it's not a copy of the original. I just don't want to be contending with a redesign and also a fully rendered image simultaneously. I'd rather tackle some of the design work in thumbnailing form first. I don't always do that, but I do like that process, and I also think it might be kind of fun as a YouTube video to just show some of that process. Like I see that there's some other folks on YouTube who do design process videos, and people seem to enjoy those. So let's see how it goes. All right, I guess we want, yes, probably some light hitting these feathers here. There's actually some kind of crazy patterning on this particular falcon I'm looking at. Again, it's a peregrine falcon, I'm pretty sure, so it's got some of those spots and things, but I hate to break it to you, but the design for Masters of the Universe does not have peregrine falcon spots, so we will not be putting those in. Maybe on another design on another day we can do that. That's a big ass bird. I actually want to shrink the head a little bit. Just looking at proportions, I feel like it's got a little bit large. And probably just raise it up a little bit. Now I'm putting some of this feather texture in, and I don't really know how much we're going to leave in, but I kind of just want to block it in and then maybe selectively erase some of it away. Because there's some shadow casting that we need to be putting in here as well. Oops, wrong way. And these sorts of textures create like a fun textile in the art. Some artists that do amazing things just graphically with textiles, even on things that you look at and consider them to be like a character illustration. And I think you get a lot of ideas from looking at Art Nouveau and Art Deco artists. And I think it was either the last video. Yeah, I think it was the last video I showed that book I got of that Art Deco artist. And if you look in there, there's this amazing use of graphic shapes and textiles. And I see some modern artists like on ArtStation that have some of those sorts of vibes to their work. I sort of wonder if maybe they are looking at art from those periods. Oh, this is one of those situations where I wish I could rotate the canvas. And I know you can, but I don't like to do it for presentation reasons. It's just jarring to rotate your paper while people are trying to look at what you're doing. So I sort of just practice trying to rotate my neck in ways that are not ergonomic. Probably not a smart idea. Okay, so now we can erase away shadows. So you can see we kind of had to like work a little bit in reverse there. This is one of those things where you probably would have benefited from like a clearer underdrawing to avoid some of this, but that's okay. It's quick to do. You know, and maybe, yeah, that's probably fine. Little shadows in between those other feathers on the top there. And now I can start to build a little bit more lighting into left side of some of these feathers and more kind of toward the center where we get more of the light concentrating. It's really just it's a rendering exercise in crosshatch, and you could really noodle the hell out of this, and the ceiling in terms of technical precision is quite high. Again, like there's some people who go real crazy with this stuff there, you know, on paper with a quill pen, right? And like every mark, I've seen some Instagram artists that are just completely amazing in terms of just the patience they have. You know, we just sort of want this to read well from a distance, and then we're not going to be trying to approach it where every single mark is heavily scrutinized. Like I'm okay with it being a little bit looser, and there being a little bit of just kind of random energy in there. Let's kill a little bit of the light here on the distant feathers. Okay, so the body's going to cast a shadow over onto this side. I want to have that strong rim light hitting this section of the bird here. Guess we can have it continue up onto this wing. And now we do, I guess maybe we could mirror some of this over, because yeah, let's take some of this and mirror it over. See, where does that go? That goes right about there. And let's put it on its own layer. Let's erase all these lines that we don't want. Ooh, we lose a little bit there. Okay, it's cool. Do I want that? I guess we can, let me see if I can taper that. Does that look weird if we taper that? Let's merge that. Okay. Okay, we're just going to have a couple little hints of it over here in the corner. I'm going to try to taper the light off over here. Let's get some of this tail feather stuff happening. Tailspin. Oh, wee, oh, tailspin. Oh, wee, tailspin. Friends in life through thick and thin with another tailspin. I'm showing my age with that one, but some of you might know that. It's a classic 90s cartoon. Not a lot of episodes, weirdly. My kid brain makes me think that that was a long-running show, but when you go look it up, it's actually pretty short. All right. Let's kill these outlines. Yeah, so again, this bird feels like it's like really in your face, but we're going to be knocking it back in terms of value. So it'll be subtle, and it won't be competing with her, and it won't look like it's landing on her head, because that's kind of how it looks right now. So we can just have a laugh at its current state, knowing it will change in a bit. I don't know that we need a whole lot indicated for that other side. Like, we can just get a couple hints, right, and we know what's going on. Let's put a little bit of the body shape in there. Okay, cool. Super cool. Let's get some water going. Stay hydrated, friends. Stay thirsty. What's that phrase? Stay thirsty, friends. Something like that. Except the opposite, right? Hydrate, don't be thirsty. All right, what's next here? So we want to, I should probably just, let's pull up our Skeletor image from before, so we can be adherent to the style. You'd think I would have it memorized at this point, but no, I do not. And I don't want to miss anything, so... Okay. Oh, let's move that out of the way. Let's put that here. Okay, we'll just have that up. All right, so... right. I think then... we'll bring in a multiply layer and fill in all of the bird, and this will act as that separator. Don't worry, he's not gone. He'll be back in just 2 seconds. 1, 2. See? Okay, now I just want him to be chilling in the background. Cool. Now he doesn't look like he's landing on her head. Or she, right? She doesn't look like she's landing on her head. That sounds weird. Anyway, it's a female falcon because it's supposed to be the sorceress. But yes, it doesn't look weird there anymore. And now we can do the little value gradation trick, if we can call it that. And this is done with a black layer and a soft eraser. And we indicate more light hitting our focal points. And we get the full brightness on the face there. Well, maybe we go... I think the idea here is that we try to have the blade feel like it's in front of the leg, the blade in front of the leg there, by using a little bit of value separation. And then I guess we can do it. We'll bring in a little bit of light here. I'll have it fade as it goes toward her feet. Let's get a little bit of the cloak lit on this side. Just remember that the brightest part of the light is going to be just beyond the edge of the cast shadow, because that represents the angle of the light, right? Like where the shadow is getting cut off is right perpendicular with the light's angle. So the light's going to be really, really strong just beyond that. Now, a lot of lights are going to have a very sort of even casting of light, and so you're not going to notice the decay, and so the effect might not be as obvious, but it's something kind of good to think about. And creating those areas of contrast are some of the secrets to making your light look really convincing. Just bring up the legs a little bit more there. Let's bring in a little more light on the ground. Okay, now we can knock this back. And we're going to erase it all. Oh, actually, let's erase it there on that left side. And we definitely want to erase it for the rim light. Oh, not that much. Just right there. Yep. And back there. Oh, I'm going to leave that, though. I'm going to leave that. Right. Let's save our work so we don't lose stuff. Now we need to run the posterize on it, so that way it doesn't have the softness. We don't really want super soft stuff going on in this image. Oh, let's set this to multiply first, so that we can see what it is that this posterize is doing. Okay. I just don't care for that that one value transition there, so I'm going to simplify that one. And I think I'm gonna bring in a little bit more. A little more nuance to that eye area. I mean, we're like breaking the rules a little bit, but faces, I feel like it's worth it to get a little bit fancy. Right. So now we want to bring in some of that suggestion of a local value to help separate parts. And we always choose a sort of accent color. And so for her, I'm going to go for this sort of like a burnt orange color. But before we colorize it, we'll just go with a gray. a gray value, and let's try that, and let's come in and let's do it on all of the most obvious places it might belong, which is on these armor bits. Now you might be thinking, well, the armor is a bright, shiny metal. Why would you make it darker? Well, because if we make it darker in the base, then when we add reflective highlights, that contrast will make this feel much more metallic. So it is actually a little trick to make metal convincing, is to make the base color darker, the base value darker. It's counterintuitive. That's why it's a trick, right? You wouldn't think to do that. That's a common issue I see with student work, is that metal is just too bright everywhere. And some metals are quite bright everywhere. That's not to say that can't happen, but there's a tendency to be like overzealous with that brightness. And then they're struggling to make the highlights look convincing because there's really no room left for them. They've used up their whole value spectrum. I guess we'll treat that as metal, and then we'll treat that as cloth. Yeah, sure. We'll do the handle. We'll do this belt made of medallions. Now this one here is tricky, right? Because we were trying to rely on that lighter value to help this stand away. But remember, we're going to come in and we're going to define some specular highlights that'll still help that feel super shiny and still feel separate. I'm going to actually leave the blade itself alone because I sort of like what it's doing there. I don't think we need to go with a darker local value for that. Maybe the bottom of the feet here, darker. The soles of the feet, the boots, whatever they are, sandals. And then we've got, this whole thing is a bracer. It's got a belt, bracer. We'll leave the feathered elements, I think, is what we're going to have be a little more saturated color, and I think we might do that with her hair. So I might do maybe the top of the boots, the cloak, and her hair might be the accent, like the heavier accent color. But let's go ahead and tint this one because this is our sort of more subtle accent. Colorize. Again, we want that kind of like burnt orange color there. You know, in execution, it ends up feeling a little bit on the brown end, right? But that's okay. Like, I think that'll be fine because we're going to add the next bit in, and we'll do that on another layer so we can easily control it. I'm going to go a little bit darker with it. I think so. I mean, we can adjust that later. I just need to get the regions blocked in that are going to be affected. So the joy of digital is the ability to tweak things. And I don't think I'll have to reestablish the rim light because I'm sort of painting over it. It's okay. Yeah, that seems fine. And then, yeah, hair I think was the other thing I wanted to do it with. Okay, let's colorize that. And let's go again for that orange. It's like a reddish orange. Okay. And with that color defined, let's put that also in the gems. This is again one of those stylistic things where we've had this on multiple characters, and I kind of like continuing it here. All right, specular highlight time. Bring this back in. This will also be a way we can bring the rim lights back in as well. Let's do the gems first. Uh-oh, we missed one. Let's get that color back. There we go. And I guess we missed a little bit of that area there too, didn't we? Make sure we get that. There we go. Cool, 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 cool. You know, that like makes it look like she has a mustache. Let's remedy that. Okay. Again, like the face is the one place where I'm okay doing a little bit of like tinkering because everybody's gonna look there first. Oh, also we can do a little bit of a nice bright highlight to the eye. And maybe do we put a little glint? Yeah. There we go. Actually, let's flip that to make sure that doesn't look wrong. Let's see, do we go? Yep. Okay. I don't like that little suggestion of the mouth there. Okay. We're fine-tuning things, folks. We're getting it dialed in. Dial that crap in. Let's do it. Everybody likes shinies? You guys like shinies? I like shinies. And we can even put a little bit in the hair. Cool, cool. All right. Yep. I think that's working. Yeah, I think I'm going to go a little more narrow with this specular highlight. Oops, this is where I wanted the reflectivity back here. Okay, perfect. Well, not perfect, but I'm satisfied. Okay. Get some specular reflection on these bits here. I'll be a little bit careful about hitting stuff over here on this side of the body too much, because light is supposed to be a little bit more subtle on that side, and if we blast it, it's gonna flatten things, so just gonna be cautious there. I'm also gonna be cautious about too much highlight on these belt medallions, because I want this handle to read like it's on top. So if I go too heavy with this highlight behind, then your eye is gonna get, it's gonna get jacked up. Your eyes are gonna get messed up. Let's go a little heavier there. Cool. Let's do a little bit here. Do a little bit there. We'll just give a little glint there and there. I have an idea. Might be kind of fun for the background. We'll try it. But not yet. One thing at a time. You guys ever have that where you're painting, you see something else somewhere else, and you're like, that's an interesting idea. I kind of want to go for it. And then you jump to it, and you sort of like lose your flow with the process a little bit. I try to be careful about disrupting the flow. Or interrupting a process where, you know, I want to be thorough about the process, and if I interrupt it, then maybe I'll like miss something. So try to be a little bit aware. I think I want to make the boot, the entire boot this color here. So let's get on that layer, grab that color, and let's paint that in. I need to reestablish the rim light again, because we sort of painted over it. And you know what? Let's do that on a different layer. Why not? Control S, friends. Don't lose your work. That's looking fun. I definitely liking how this is coming together. It this method definitely takes a little bit of vision and a little bit of patience and a little bit of faith, I guess, in the process because a lot of it comes together in these final stages, and while you're getting there, there can definitely be some concerns that things are not going to work out. Kill that. I think we can actually show a little bit of that hitting right there. Sure. Okay. Do we show a little bit? Yep. Nope. Okay, maybe a little bit. Just a hint. Just a hint. I do think I want a little bit of that rim light hitting the foot here. Although, now, you know what? I sort of like, and in fact, I think I'm going to kill this specular here. I'm sort of liking just losing the rim light down there. I like that we're really drawing your eye up to the top. So I think we'll just stick with that. I think I want to bring a little bit more light into... How am I going to do this? Let's see. Flat. Oh, getting tricky there. Oh, right, the bird. Although, I guess, well, let's see. I'm a little bit concerned about having the rim light be equally bright on the bird. But maybe it's okay because this part is far enough away from her where I think we can do it. I'll just put a little bit kind of touching this part right here. So, let's see. Talking about finishing touches here, I sort of like the idea that maybe there's like a little bit of glint off the blade. That's tangenting with that mountain shape. We don't want that. That's a little too aggressive. Let's tone it down. And maybe there's a little couple glints off of these as well, little sparklies. I was kind of enjoying that sort of sparkliness going on. Hey, welcome in. Yeah, I did draw that. It's all the vlogs are on my YouTube channel. If you want to go check it out, you can kind of see how we got here from the very beginning before we had anything. Let's see. Let's get a little bit of rim light on that little clasp for her cloak. Right. So finishing touches, like I was thinking something. Well, there's one thing that I know I'm going to do. And there's something else that I think is a little bit crazy that I want to try, but it might feel just too out of left field. It might feel too aggressive compared to all the other pieces we've done in this series so far. So let's start with the one that I know I want to do, which is I want to give the Falcon glowing eyes, because this is an 80s cartoon, and my gosh, there is every excuse for us to have something with glowing eyes, right? So let's do that. And I think we'll use this color. And now I have to be extra cautious of the symmetry on this face, because now we can see this other eye. And if we jack that up, then it's all over, friends. We've lost. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try to do this in a way that, you know, glow, you think, okay, well, glow wants there to be like a soft fall off, right? But we're just going to use some very selective graphical treatments here to get that to feel like it's got a glow, but it's not soft fall off, right? It's a bit more of like a graphical treatment of that. You know, now that that's in there, I actually don't think that we need to explore the other outrageous idea, but you guys are going to be mad if I don't say what it was going to be. So I was thinking about maybe there's just like some stylistic, like wind shear kind of like trails kind of flowing off the bird, like kind of filling in this area a little bit. Maybe we'll just do it. Let's just do it and see what happens. It's going to be easy to test it. And we can always delete it, right, if we don't like it. So let's just do that. I'm going to block in a general area for it. Let's get this shape here working. And then, okay, we'll put a mask on our layer. So that way, as we're doodling this, we don't have to be worried about staying in the lines. Like I can get a little crazy with this. You can see it stays constrained to that region. For the most part, we'll have to do a cleanup if we decide on sticking with this, but. And I don't know exactly what sort of look I'm going for with this, but I'm thinking like some kind of, you know, like wind, stylistic wind thing. That's about as specific as I can be about it, but I think it might be kind of neat, and it's going to be subtle. So this is starting to get into that idea of like patterns as textiles, graphical treatments in an image, and you might get some ideas from looking at some of those artists we were talking about earlier, Art Nouveau, Art Deco. They do some of these things that are just so bold, and if you're somebody who's typically working in the realm of like representational art, trying to represent, you know, like things that are realistic or things that are quite immersive, you may leave some of these ideas out, even though they could have been really powerful and interesting to integrate. So something that I like to try and do more of in my work. And so my inclination when I'm thinking about this idea is, wow, that's probably really ballsy and it might not be great. But I should probably just try it because it's different than what I would normally do. And I like that kind of art. So this is kind of why we're getting in here and we're doing this. And I'm putting it in and I'm thinking, actually, there's something kind of interesting about that. Now, I think what we might want to do is colorize it to match the rest of the colors in the image there. So we'll go with like that orange. So that way, if we go to grayscale, you'll see that it's quite a dark value there. That sort of fades into the background. And we've always also added a little hint of some grime, some grunge, some texture and splatter to this. So that way it has a little bit of an homage to traditional media. So I want to get that in as well. Get over to my splatter brush. Okay, let's see. Where is it? Grunge. Speckles. I believe that's the right one. Let's see if we got it. Yep, that's the one. So we're going to do a little bit of light speckles. Oh, actually, we can put a little bit on that glow on the eyes. That's kind of nice, right? Maybe a little bit off of this blade here. So it's just to kind of like throw in a little, just extra texture. Just a little bit of eye candy. More for your eyeballs to chew on. And then let's do the opposite. We'll do some dark splatter as well, which I think is actually a little easier to integrate because there's so much dark shadow in the image. I'm tempted to, okay, yeah, there's a couple other quick little tweaks I want to do here. Maybe we'll get a little aggressive with a couple splatters. Let's get some big ones. Yeah, there we go. Don't be scared. And then let's make sure we erase any on her face because that would just be weird. Oh, okay, yeah. So the two things, one was the local tone on her outfit. This tone, I actually want to include the leotard in that. I realize that's probably a mistake not to include that. So let's just do that. I thought about maybe having the tone of the cloak in this fabric here. So let's do that. Yep. And then I was thinking it might be kind of cool if maybe like her eye was like that color too, right? A little bit of that coloration in there. Draw the viewer into that section. Okay. Now that extra little bit of flare we did there, let's play with the opacity. Whoa, look at how look how crazy that is if you go bright on it. That's funny. I want it to be very, very subtle. Although it's a fun kind of thing, isn't it? Okay, okay, we're gonna go. Okay, there we go. We're gonna stop there. I feel like this is the other thing too, is the more you look at an image, the more you're gonna start to respond positively to dramatic changes because it feels fresh to you, and you got to just be careful about that, right? And we've looked at this image for a decent amount of time, and now I might start just getting excited about anything that feels like a refresh to this image. So I want to be cautious with this. You know, usually I publish this stuff, you know, like tomorrow or the next day to social media, the image. And when I look back at it, usually I'll maybe adjust the contrast or the brightness or something. Just with fresh eyes, I might see that, okay, yeah, maybe it needs to be a little brighter, a little darker, whatever. So I do have an opportunity to like kind of tinker with that a little bit. I realized that I did kind of mess up there. Let's clean this up a bit. Flat. Make sure we're not crossing into the shield there, into the mountains. That mask was not the cleanest mask. We did it sort of quick because we didn't know if we were going to like it, but here we are. We ended up liking it. Okay. Yeah, and I think that we dealt with this area all right. Like the leg, the blade in front of the leg. Again, I had some concerns about getting that to read the overlap, but we used some clever values there to help us separate things. We used some specular reflections to bring that blade forward. And I think that overall works. And I'm into it. I think it was a good tribute image to Teela from Masters of the Universe. And I think that's a good place for us to end the series for now. To be continued, right? We can always come back to the series in the future if there's a lot of demand to see particular characters that we didn't get to. Maybe you guys want to see Manny Faces, Orko. There's a handful more that could be cool to explore, but I think we've had a really good run at the Masters of the Universe series. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed creating these. And then so for the next stream, we're going to be again doing the real Ghostbusters cartoon villain redesigns. And I don't know how many we'll do, but it'll be more than one. And in that series, it'll be quite different than what we've seen with this. This has been this very sort of unique style. It's been a kind of graphical, a little illustrative, right? It's a bit representational, but a bit graphic. There's a unique sort of look to these that I really enjoy doing. And with this next series, it'll be a different approach where we're going to be looking at design in iterative form like you would do if you were a concept artist. And I think that'll be interesting to look at, right? We'll do some thumbnails, we'll block out the character, and then we'll render the character. And so you guys can see some of the ways that I like approaching rendering, and maybe that'll be interesting for you guys to take a look at. I'm sure I'll have fun doing it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate you stopping by. And again, consider to like and subscribe. Really appreciate your support. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.